Christmas has a way of dividing a family into those who receive blessings and those who receive burdens. That year, I learned exactly where I stood. The living room was decked in lights, pine needles littered the carpet, and the air smelled of cinnamon candles. My sister Rebecca sat near the fireplace, her cheeks flushed pink from champagne, her eyes glittering with a smugness she didn't bother to hide. Mom handed her a box wrapped in gold foil. Rebecca peeled it open slowly, theatrically, as if the entire house was her stage. Inside were keys, resting on a satin ribbon. Rebecca gasped. "A house? You got me a house in Denver?" The room erupted in claps and laughter. Carl, my stepfather, clapped the loudest, his heavy palms smacking together like gunshots. Mom beamed at Rebecca as though she had just crowned her Queen of America. "Yes," she said. "You've worked so hard, honey. You deserve a fresh start, a place of your own." I sat stiff on the sofa, my hands pressed against my knees, waiting. My turn came when Mom slid a much smaller box across the coffee table. I opened it with a half smile, trying not to appear desperate, but my stomach churned with the anticipation of being recognized, finally, for my own struggles. Inside was a ceramic piggy bank, painted pale pink, and beneath it, folded neatly, a $50 bill. Mom's eyes softened with a kind of false generosity. "That's our contribution to your future home, Madison." I forced a laugh, but my throat tightened. A piggy bank and $50. Rebecca got a house in Denver worth over $200,000, and I got a ceramic farm animal and a bill that wouldn't even cover a week's groceries. The others chuckled as if it were all in good humor, but I could feel the humiliation scorch across my face. My phone buzzed then, the vibration sharp against my leg. I pulled it out. A text from Carl lit up the screen. "Don't forget to pay the utility bills this month. It's your responsibility now." That was it. Something inside me snapped, a wire pulled too tight. My chest filled with a fury that felt like fire pressing against the ribs. I had tolerated their dismissiveness for years. Smiles that dripped with condescension, promises that evaporated when it came to me. But that night, watching Rebecca cradle her keys while I held a piggy bank, my tolerance burned away like paper in flame. I rose from the couch slowly, clutching the piggy bank so hard I thought it might crack. No one noticed. They were too busy toasting Rebecca's new life, their glasses clinking together in a chorus of triumph. I walked upstairs, my steps heavy, and dragged my suitcases from the closet. Each zip of the luggage teeth sounded like defiance. In my room, I packed furiously, throwing jeans, sweaters, and notebooks into the bags. Every slam of a drawer was a declaration. I won't stay here another night. I won't play the scapegoat in their theater of favoritism. My hands shook, not from sadness, but from anger so raw it electrified my body. Downstairs, I heard Rebecca laugh again, that high, sharp note that always felt aimed at me. I imagined her in her shiny new Denver house, decorating it with Mom's money, Carl's money, while I worked to pay their damn utility bills. Rage twisted my stomach, but beneath it grew something sharper, resolve. When the suitcases were packed, I slipped on my coat and boots, my breath quickening as if I were preparing for battle. I carried the bags down the staircase slowly, each thud on the step daring someone to stop me. But no one looked up. They were too drunk on champagne, too drunk on themselves. I stood at the front door, gripping the handle, and turned back for one last glance. Mom was pouring more wine. Carl had his arm around Rebecca, grinning as though he had married into royalty. Rebecca lifted her phone, snapping a photo of her keys, probably crafting the perfect caption for social media. "A fresh start in Denver. Blessed." My jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached. I wanted to scream, to smash the piggy bank across the floor, to demand the years of recognition they had stolen from me. But I didn't. Revenge doesn't start with noise. It starts with silence and planning. I opened the door. Cold air rushed in, sharp as knives. Snow drifted across the lawn, blanketing the world in white, but I felt no purity in it, only the bitter chill of exclusion. I pulled the door shut behind me, the sound echoing like a gunshot through the night. Outside, The weight of the suitcases cut into my hands, but the burden felt cleaner than anything I had carried inside that house. The street was quiet, save for the crunch of snow beneath my boots. I was 24 years old, with 2 suitcases, $50, and a grudge sharpened enough to cut glass. As I walked down the block, I whispered to myself, "They think they've won. They think I'll always be beneath them. But they're wrong." My voice trembled, but not from weakness, from the force of conviction. America was vast, full of cities that didn't know my name yet, full of opportunities waiting for someone willing to carve them out with bare hands. I thought of Chicago, of New York, of places where power hummed in skyscrapers and money moved faster than rivers. I thought of Brazil too, though I had never been there, how its very name stirred images of escape, of a place so far from this Ohio street that it might as well be another world. The snow soaked through my boots, my fingers stiff with cold, but I felt unstoppable. Aggression coursed through me like fuel. For years, they had tried to keep me small, handing me scraps while they fed Rebecca banquets. But leaving wasn't surrender. It was declaration. I would take their insult, their betrayal, and forge it into something stronger. I would build myself into a storm so fierce they would one day look at me with the same awe they gave Rebecca, but with fear woven into it. They would know I hadn't just survived. I had thrived. And when I returned, I wouldn't be holding a piggy bank. I'd be holding power. The bus stop glowed faintly at the end of the street. I dragged my suitcases there, breath visible in the frozen air. My hands were raw, my wallet nearly empty, but I carried something more valuable than money, rage sharpened into ambition. That night, while Rebecca celebrated her house and Mom toasted her triumph, I boarded a bus out of Ohio. The lights of my hometown flickered in the distance, shrinking smaller and smaller until they vanished. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. I pressed my forehead against the window, the glass cold against my skin, and whispered, "This isn't the end. It's the start of my revenge." And in that moment, I believed it with every fiber of my being. The bus to Chicago rattled like it was being held together by rust and determination. My seat smelled faintly of old coffee and cigarette smoke, but I didn't care. The road was dark, the windows smeared with snow, and the hum of the engine drowned out the echoes of Rebecca's laughter still playing in my head. Leaving Ohio felt like leaving a graveyard behind me. I pressed my forehead against the glass and repeated the vow I had whispered the night I walked out. They think they've buried me, but I'll rise. Stronger, louder, meaner. Chicago loomed large in my imagination, a city of steel and glass, where ambition didn't whisper but shouted. I had only $50, 2 suitcases, and a fury burning through my veins. But fury, I was learning, could be currency. It gave me the drive to drag those bags off the bus and into a city that didn't care who I was. The first nights were brutal. I stayed in a rundown motel near the South Side, paying in cash, each night chewing away at my meager funds. The room was small, the walls stained with shadows of old smoke, the radiator groaning louder than I slept. Every dollar I spent felt like a piece of me being ripped away, and I swore I would never be poor enough again to count quarters under the buzz of fluorescent lights. I found a diner on Michigan Avenue willing to pay me $6 an hour under the table. The boss, a wiry man named George, sneered when I begged for the job, but I didn't care about his smirk. I needed money, not approval. I scrubbed dishes until my hands cracked from the hot water, carried plates heavier than my wrists could handle, and endured drunks who called me sweetheart and baby doll. Each insult, each greasy bill tipped into my palm, I stored away in my mind's piggy bank of grudges. I was building something bigger than they could see. It was at that diner I met Daniel. He slid into a booth one night, ordering coffee he barely touched, his leather jacket creaking as he leaned back with a smirk that reminded me too much of Carl. But unlike Carl, Daniel wasn't content with small-town control. His arrogance stretched across Chicago like it owned the skyline. "You're new here," he said, eyes sweeping over me like he was cataloging what I was worth. Ohio accent. "You're running from something." I set his coffee down hard enough to make it slosh. "Or running toward something," I shot back. That made him smile. He told me he made money flipping cars, though I suspected he meant stealing them as much as selling them. He carried himself like he owned half the city, even if his shoes were scuffed and his hands bore the grease of his trade. He offered to take me out, and against my better judgment, I said yes. Daniel introduced me to a world I had only seen from the edges: smoky bars lit with neon, poker games in the back of garages, deals made with quick handshakes and quicker lies. He liked to brag about the money he made, 1,000 in a day, easy if you know the right people, and he flashed bills at bartenders to prove it. He made Chicago seem like a city built for the ruthless. I listened, I watched, and I learned. One night, he brought me to a party in an apartment overlooking the river. His sister, Claire, was there, tall, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who looked like she had survived her share of battles. She pulled me aside while Daniel laughed with his friends. "You're not the first girl he's promised the world," she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. "Don't let him break you." I stared at her, fury rising in me at the suggestion I might be breakable. "I don't need promises," I said. "I need opportunity." Claire studied me for a moment, then nodded, as if she saw the iron under my skin. "Good, because he'll never see you coming." For weeks, I worked by day and followed Daniel by night. I pocketed tips until I had $1,000 saved, crumpled bills hidden in the lining of my suitcase, as if protecting them from theft, or from my own fear of losing them. When I handed the stack to Daniel, his laughter was loud enough to draw stares. "That's pocket change in the city," he scoffed, counting the bills like they were scraps. "You can't do anything with this." I smiled, though inside I seethed. He didn't know me yet. He didn't know what $50 had already bought me: survival, escape, the first step on the road to vengeance. To him, money was a toy, a way to show off. To me, money was a weapon, and I was sharpening it. Daniel kept talking, bragging about the deals he could cut if he had real money. I let him speak, memorizing the cadence of his greed, filing away every weakness in his armor. I didn't trust him, not for a second, but I wasn't there for trust. I was there to learn how men like him climbed, so I could climb higher, faster, and push them off the ladder when the time came. Every night I walked back to my motel, the city lights glittering like promises. My feet ached, my back screamed, but the aggression boiling inside me kept me upright. I would make Chicago mine. I would build myself out of spite, out of fury, until no one could look at me and see the girl with a piggy bank again. Daniel thought he was teaching me about money. What he was really teaching me was how fragile arrogance could be. He thought I was small. He thought I was dependent. He thought wrong. And I swore to myself, as I folded my apron one night and counted my meager tips under the buzzing neon light, the day will come when men like Daniel, men like Carl, even Rebecca with her smug smile in Denver, will bow their heads when they see me. Not out of love, not out of respect, out of fear. Spring came with a bitter thaw, the kind that melts the snow but leaves the air sharp enough to sting your lungs. By then I had left Chicago and Daniel behind me. He had been useful, like a stepping stone, but I wasn't built to be anyone's shadow. I wanted skyscrapers, not garages, so I bought a one-way bus ticket and rode east until the steel towers of New York City rose before me like a fortress I intended to conquer. I found a room in Queens for $400 a month. The place was barely more than a closet, its window jammed shut, the radiator hissing like it was mocking me. But it was mine. I paid cash to a landlord who didn't ask questions, and I taped a piece of paper on the wall above my mattress, where I began to write numbers. My savings. My future. Every dollar would be recorded there. Every dollar would be proof that I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. By day, I tempied in midtown offices, answering phones, filing endless stacks of paper, smiling with clenched teeth at executives who treated me as furniture. By night, I worked behind the bar at a club in Manhattan, serving gin and whiskey to men who thought my name was an invitation. I didn't care about their stares, their smirks, or the casual way they leaned too close. They were nothing but moving wallets, and I took their tips with a smile that hid the fury boiling inside me. Each night, When the shift ended and my feet throbbed from standing 14 hours straight, I would drag myself back to Queens and sit under the dim bulb in my room. I opened my notebook and recorded the numbers. $2,350, $3,420, $4,100. Every increase was a victory. Every dollar was another nail in the coffin of the girl my family had tried to bury. I wasn't saving money. I was stockpiling weapons. And then, one evening, I made the mistake of opening social media. Rebecca's face filled the screen, glowing in the warm Denver sunlight. She stood in front of her brand new home, her wine glass raised high, her smile smug enough to choke on. The caption read, "Thanks to Mom and Carl for helping us settle in." My chest tightened. Helping us. Not me. Never me. The photo burned into my vision. Mom's words echoed in my head, the condescending smile she wore when she handed me that piggy bank. Carl's text, "Don't forget to pay the bills." Rebecca's laughter. Their belief that I was disposable, an afterthought. I threw my phone across the room. It cracked against the wall, the sound sharp and satisfying, though not enough. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I stood up, pacing my tiny room like a caged animal, fists clenched, so tight my nails cut into my palms. They gave her a home. I spat aloud, the words like poison on my tongue. And they gave me scraps. They made me pay for their lights, their water, while they poured wine into her glass. They built her world and told me to survive mine. The rage was suffocating, but it wasn't empty. It was fuel. I stared at the numbers on my wall. The ink smudged where I had pressed the pen too hard, for $1,100. To anyone else, it was small. To me, it was power. To me, it was a declaration that I could build what they refused to give me. That night, I swore to myself. I would return, not begging, not asking for scraps, but conquering. I would walk back into their lives with so much power they wouldn't know whether to bow or to run. New York began to shape me into that person. The city was cruel, but cruelty had always been my teacher. The subway delays, the landlords with dead eyes, the customers who treated me like I was invisible. All of it toughened me. I stopped being the girl who waited for fairness. I became the woman who took what she wanted. At the bar, I learned to smile while memorizing the wallets men pulled from their pockets, calculating tips before they dropped them. I listened to their boasts about real estate, stocks, and bonuses, pretending to be charmed while cataloging their greed. I learned that money wasn't just survival, it was control. And control was sweeter than revenge, because it meant no one could ever humiliate me again. One night, a drunk investment banker slurred at me, "You're too pretty to be here, sweetheart. You should marry rich." I leaned in close, my voice low and sharp. "I'd rather take it myself." He laughed, thinking I was joking. I didn't laugh. The aggression inside me grew every day. When exhaustion clawed at me, when my hands shook from pouring drinks or stapling papers, I reminded myself of Rebecca's grin. I reminded myself of Mom's false generosity. I reminded myself of Carl's text demanding bills. Those memories were no longer wounds. They were weapons. By summer, my savings had doubled. $8,200, $10,500, $12,900. Each number made me stronger. I stuck new sheets of paper to the wall, my room slowly wallpapered with proof of my ascent. Every time I wanted to quit, I looked at those numbers and thought of Denver, of champagne glasses clinking in the warm glow of favoritism, and I worked another shift. But revenge isn't just about saving. It's about planning. I began to study the people around me. The landlords who owned half the block, the bartenders who ran side hustles, the temp workers who sold information for cash. Everyone in New York was hustling, clawing, lying their way to something better. If they could, so could I. The fire inside me had started as anger, but New York turned it into ambition. The city whispered to me in every flickering streetlight, "You don't just survive here. You conquer." One night, after my shift, I stood on the Queensboro Bridge, staring at the skyline glittering like a crown of knives. The Empire State Building rose above it all, lit up like it was daring me to try. My hands were raw, my pockets still light, but my heart thundered with certainty. I whispered into the night air, my voice hoarse but steady. I will take this city. I will take back everything they stole. And when I return, I won't just be Madison. I'll be the storm they never saw coming. The wind whipped across the bridge, cold and biting, but I didn't flinch. I welcomed the sting. It reminded me of Ohio, of what I had left, of the betrayal that had forged me. But now I wasn't just Madison from Ohio. I was Madison of New York, and I was on fire. 2 years passed like a blur of neon lights, crumpled bills, and sleepless nights. By the time I turned 26, the girl who had walked out of Ohio with $50 and a piggy bank was gone. In her place stood a woman forged by hunger and hardened by fire. New York had trained me well. I knew how to make money, how to multiply it, and most importantly, how to wield it like a blade. I had $45,000 in savings. Every dollar was earned with my own blood, sweat, and rage. I bought a black BMW, used but polished to a shine, in cash. When I slid behind the wheel for the first time, I gripped the steering wheel like it was the neck of every person who had doubted me. The engine's roar was more than sound, it was proof. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was a storm, and storms return home eventually. So I drove back to Ohio. Every mile I covered, I replayed the scenes of my past. Mom's condescending smile, Carl's text demanding bills, Rebecca's champagne toast in her Denver house. They thought I would vanish into failure. Instead, I was coming back, sharper than glass and richer than they ever imagined. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The paint on the shutters was peeling, the porch sagged in places. It wasn't the palace I had built in my nightmares. But that didn't matter. What mattered was the battlefield it represented. I parked the BMW in the driveway, the engine purring like a predator. When I stepped out, my boots clicked against the concrete, each sound deliberate, each step a warning. I rang the bell, my heart pounding not with fear but with anticipation. Carl opened the door. His smile was stiff, forced, like a man trying to decide whether to welcome or defend. "Madison," he said, voice caught between surprise and unease. "You're back?" "Yes." My voice was calm, steady, the kind of voice that made men nervous. I stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. The echo of my boots against the old wooden floor filled the silence, like a drumbeat. The living room hadn't changed much. The same sagging couch, the same coffee table scarred by years of careless glasses. But what struck me most was how ordinary it all was. They had built a kingdom in their heads, but it was just a house like any other. Mom appeared from the kitchen, her hands damp from washing dishes. Her face lit up when she saw me, but the smile faltered when she noticed the confidence in my stride, the sharpness in my eyes. Rebecca sat on the sofa, scrolling her phone, her wine glass balanced on the armrest. She looked up, and for the first time in my life, I saw uncertainty flicker across her perfect face. I dropped my bag onto the table with a heavy thud. Then I reached inside and pulled out a stack of cash, $10,000. I laid it flat on the table, the bills fanning out like a green slap across their complacency. "That," I said, my voice cutting through the room, "is your debt to me. Paid in full. For every bill you dumped on me, for every insult disguised as advice, for every time you made me the outcast. From now on, you don't owe me a damn thing, and I don't owe you either." The silence was suffocating. Rebecca's face drained of color. Carl's mouth opened, then shut again. Mom stepped forward, her hand reaching for mine, her lips trembling. "Madison," she whispered, "you don't need to do this. We're family." I pulled my hand away, my eyes cold. Family doesn't build one child a house and give the other a piggy bank. Family doesn't make one pay the bills while the other sips wine in Denver.
"No, Mom."
"You don't get to call this family." Rebecca finally spoke, her voice sharp, defensive. "You're being dramatic. We did what we could." "Shut up." My words cut like steel, and for once she did. Her mouth snapped closed, her eyes wide. I could see the fear in her, and it tasted sweeter than any champagne she'd ever toasted with. I turned to Carl, locking my gaze on him. You thought I'd drown, didn't you? You thought I'd stay stuck in this town, paying your bills, living small. But I didn't. I built myself into something stronger than all of you combined. And now I'm standing here, not to beg, but to show you what you created. You made me this way. Every sneer, every dismissal, every slap of humiliation, you forged me into the woman who doesn't need you. Carl swallowed hard, his face pale. He didn't dare argue. I grabbed the BMW keys from my pocket and twirled them once around my finger, the metal glinting in the light. See this? Paid in cash. Not with handouts, not with pity, but with sweat and fury. I didn't come back to share my success with you. I came back to bury the past in your faces and leave you with nothing but the memory of how wrong you were. I let the silence hang for a moment, savoring the weight of it. Their eyes followed me as I turned toward the door. Mom's lips trembled, Rebecca's nails dug into her wine glass, and Carl looked like a man watching his own authority crumble. At the threshold, I paused and looked back one last time. You made me an outcast. Now I'm stronger than all of you. Remember that every time you see a black BMW in this town. Then I left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't need to. The quiet click was louder than any explosion. Outside, the air was crisp, the sky is steel gray. I slid into the driver's seat, the leather cool against my skin, and started the engine. The BMW roared to life, a sound of triumph. As I pulled away from the house, I didn't glance in the rearview mirror. The past was behind me, shrinking smaller with every mile. My revenge wasn't fire or chaos. It was silence, power, and presence. It was the sight of their stunned faces, the weight of the cash I left on their table, the echo of my boots on their floor. It was the knowledge that America had chewed me up and spit me out sharper, richer, and unbreakable. As the miles stretched out before me, I whispered to myself, this is only the beginning. Because revenge is never finished with one strike. It grows, it expands, it feeds on every slight, every memory. And I knew, as New York's skyline called me back, that the storm I had become was only just learning how to rage.